Hi, welcome back to Intake, and we're talking with Catherine Ashton, who is a therapist, an activist, and yoga teacher. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yoga teacher, and she deals with yoga and trauma, and we're having such a great conversation with her. Catherine, you said something earlier about the women who came in right after our current president came in office, and this idea of feeling like they don't have ownership of their body. What does that mean for me now? Of course, all of us have some concerns about that, especially with this current abortion ban, how Mississippi has done things. I read about a 14-year-old who was raped, and they're making her hold this baby now, keep this baby by her rapist. So give me your take on that.
Yeah, a big topic, right?
Yeah, it's a really big topic.
Well, I can share this with you. One, it is an ongoing concern and issue for almost every woman that I know. And even my own personal experience, there was a time in the last couple of weeks, I'm 56 years old. Let's just suffice to say there are no more babies on my horizon, and I am very for a lot of different reasons. And there was a moment in time in the last couple of weeks with all the bans coming up that I was listening to the news at one point, and I literally felt unsafe in my body. And that was I think probably the most profound experience for me as a woman, was in that moment, just listening to the news. And I thought, how does that compare to other women that are walking around that are childbearing age, or women that are women of color that don't have access, which is where a lot of this is headed. And I can't even imagine. I just can't imagine. I think we need to stop using the word pro-life because it's rhetoric.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's not pro-life. It's about anti-choice, and it's about anti-reproductive freedom, and it's ultimately about controlling women's bodies. And there is no, I think, any other way to even consider talking about this, and I don't want to sugarcoat things. This is, I think, a really tenuous time. And I think, again, this is part of the same kind of stronghold that we were talking about earlier as it relates to the administration. That this is about literally the old paradigm of white, affluent, male Christian communities that are literally taking on and imposing belief systems and old ways of doing things. And it's frightening. And I think it's also simultaneously an opportunity, again, for us to be collectively working together and putting a voice to this. Because this is a really hugely important issue for everybody, but particularly for women.
Exactly. And while a lot of people say, well, this is not Trump's doing and he's against it, can I just say he's inspired it?
Absolutely.
Do we know he's against it?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was. I thought. I mean, this is a direct result of in just in reading and in watching and in seeing who he's appointed. It's a direct result of what he's created with this administration.
I think just to blame number 45 for any of this really gets a whole lot of other people off the hook. And this is I think this is an administration. This is a hand-chosen, purposely, intentionally hand-chosen administration that is a group of people that have perpetuated this and promoted it. It's not even allowed, but it's been promoted. It's an active agenda that's been promoted.
And just so that we can keep it on the topic, of mental health, because this is an issue. When you're talking about taking away the rights of a woman, especially if she's raped and she has that choice whether or not, and of course, I'm a Christian woman, spiritual. I don't believe in abortion, but I don't believe in taking away someone's choice. My opinion is the greatest gift that God has ever given us is the gift of choice. And so if a woman has been violated and you're making her carry this baby, and give birth to this baby, a baby that you yourself as a government is not willing to help out with, then I think that can be traumatizing within itself.
Absolutely.
And how do we as therapists approach that? Because women are dealing with this, and like you said, you don't know, even at whatever age you are, you kind of feel threatened in your own body as a woman. That definitely, speaks to mental health, how it affects our psyche.
Well, and the mental health implications and the trauma implications for not only mother, but for baby. A baby coming in who is not welcome, who is not wanted, who was conceived under sometimes violent circumstances, this is really not good for anybody. And we are further perpetuating trauma on the most basic of levels. There's a whole field of study called epigenetics at this point, and this is coming from a Western medicine research perspective, which is known for being fairly conservative. And what they have found is that trauma lives in the DNA of at least one generation past, and that's just the beginnings of this. So when we take a look at what we are perpetuating by taking away women's choices, it's disempowering all the way around, and it's frightening.
Yes, if I could share that with one of the trainings that I took with you in the Circle of Hope, that's a topic that came up. And to discuss all the different types of traumas. As a woman, sometimes you just get comfortable with how everyday life is, so you tend to forget. But in sitting through the training and that topic came up, it was just fascinating and almost awing as well to hear all the different types of trauma that we as women face. And even just merely having this this new law being passed in different states, that in itself causes trauma to think about the fact that, oh my gosh, me, myself, I do not have say-so over my body.
Right. Yeah, to no longer have agency. And that's kind of the interesting thing about trauma is it doesn't necessarily have to be happening to us right now.
Right.
It's about hearing about it, and it's about other women experiencing it. And the closer in those relationships that we are, the more impact it's going to have on us, and re-traumatizing and revisiting some of those things. And the kind of the good news, which is kind of a funny thing to think about, seeing as we are currently doing a media interview here. The good news is that we can get a phenomenal amount of information out very quickly to mass amounts of people. The bad news is we can get a phenomenal amount of information out to vast amount of people very quickly. And so when we hear these things in the news going on over and over and over and over, that in and by itself can be really triggering for a lot of people. And I don't think we can minimize the effect of that also.
Absolutely.
Right. Catherine, before we let you go, can you just tell our viewers how they can contact you? Because as we know, you travel around and give these classes. Can you tell?
May I ask, is it in the United States, or as I know you travel over the United States, do you do further than the United States, or what's your scope?
We have 4 branches to the Yoga to Transform Trauma. The first is the leadership. It's a 3-day leadership and teacher training intensive. And that I facilitate and guide across the United States. We have not gone international at this point. I would love to, and certainly open to it. But that training is at this point within the United States.
Okay.
The second branch is the outreach program. And that means that we are providing Circles of Hope, which is a combination of a supportive talk group experience with embodied practices such as yoga and meditation. And those are held at any number of places around the United States that you would find people that are unable to access it. So we're in women's centers, we're in jails, we're in prisons, we're working with groups that have rescued from sex trafficking. And then we have the actual Circles of Hope, which are found in more traditional yoga spaces open to the general community. Those currently, we expanded into Mexico City last year, and we are currently expanding into the Middle East and specifically Jordan as we speak, which is exciting. So we're looking to get the word out there and to partner with other people, with other agencies and organizations. So the best way to get a hold of us is www.yogatotransformtrauma.org. And how you get a hold of us specifically and to contact us is right there on the website. We also have a Facebook page with similar information, and of course Instagram also, although we're still learning our way around that one. So.
Join the crew. I'm still learning too. So Catherine, I want to thank you so much for your time, taking out the time to just have a conversation with us and get the word out about how these issues are affecting mental health, and that we need to talk about them more and then learn more about what we can do.
Well, I really have to thank you guys for inviting me. I'm super touched. I'm super excited to be a part of this. I love what you're doing. And it's amazing work to me to be able to connect with like-minded individuals. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Catherine.
You have a
You guys have a great afternoon.
That was a great interview. What do you guys think?
I think that was a really good interview. As I was stating earlier, having been included in one of her circle of hopes, it was a very good experience because of the opportunity that we had to discuss those things that she was talking about. Racism came up, and I have to say, in that space, there was only one other female that looked like me, and to have her talk about racism, to have her speak about there is no reverse racism, to have her bring that to the table, I felt validated.
Right.
And it was a great experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I love talking to her because, and I just think this is I think this is refreshing because, and I'm talking about from an African-American standpoint. That's why I love you so much, girl. Because I think from an on the real. That's why because as an African-American, you don't have enough European-Americans that are willing to sit down and have these conversations with us.
And I unfortunately, I know that, and it makes me very sad.
Say from first meeting her, I have her and I have another coworker friend who I have no problem. Our conversations are real, they're genuine. I can say certain things and not get that, well, I have a black friend. I don't get that with, it's tell me about it, and if I don't understand, can you provide me with some research? And I about want to faint.
Yeah.
What? You want a book? And it just, again, like I said, it validates me as a person where I don't have to constantly feel like I'm walking around, because let's talk about trauma. African American individuals and other groups walk around with trauma, and we're gaslighted to believe we don't have this trauma.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's key because you said it twice, validation. And as human beings, we all need validation.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, the African American community, people of color, have been devalued for so long. And so we have now, as we know it, we have this stigma of being these black angry women. We have the stigma of black men being angry and violent. But what do you do when you're constantly having to put up this wall, because society is looking at you a certain way? What do you do with that?
And that's exactly right. And I guess how we connected so quickly was I'm very aware that happens, and we talk about it. I'm very open about, that person overreacted. Yeah, right. I talk about it a lot. And it's on a daily basis, and that I hear it, that I see it, that it's a conversation that I have with somebody on a daily, and it is so important. I feel like my responsibility as a person who is in part of a privileged group. I'm a female, so I'm marginalized that way, right. But I have never had to go through the stuff that you've had to go through just because of the color of your skin. And it is my responsibility to own that and to talk about it and to try to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I'm sorry to cut you off. No. I think it's great, especially because you're a therapist.
Yes.
Because we don't have enough therapists who don't look like me, who look like you, where you're open to that conversation. And people need to know that.
Yes.
Because in this Making America Great Again, it gives that perception that, okay, we're going back to the old. And therefore there is, because we're talking about a correlation within the medical profession, within mental health, that wasn't open to individuals that look like me or other colored individuals. And so now, I don't want, as a therapist, I don't want individuals to think that there isn't a space, that, like Catherine said, that there's brave spaces, because there is, and it's in a therapist's office. However, it's just, you need to understand who it is that you're seeking out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's very important for someone of color to understand that there are those people who still aren't ready to have those conversations.
Yes.
And it's okay to say, no, thank you, I'm going to go find somebody else.
Yeah.
And that they have every right to do that. Because, I mean, we just quick little personal story. We have a colleague who put something out on her Facebook. It was her business page, she has a private practice, and a Caucasian female, I just hit my microphone. Ooh, sorry. A Caucasian female, here I go, talking my hands, said racism doesn't exist anymore, just right off the bat on this Facebook. And that happens all the time, every day. Some white person is saying, no.
And you know what? It makes me wonder.
Gaslighting.
Yeah, it makes me wonder because it's traumatizing for African Americans. It makes me wonder if these people, European, I don't mean these people, but European Americans, the ones who are, not you people, girl. Yeah, but the ones who, you know, the white Americans who don't want to have this discussion, if maybe it's too traumatizing for them to say, okay, yeah, I hate. You know, I'm like, really?
Well, I think there's a couple things there, and I know we've talked about this, and I don't know if we're hitting on this now, but what I see, a couple things. If I say, yeah, I have some judgments, I have some prejudices, I have these preconceived notions, then I am making myself vulnerable to whatever. I can't control your reaction to that, and you may come at me with the full force of everything, you know, and I'm scared, okay, maybe, or if I admit that there's a problem, I have to do something to change it. If I am not in ignorance,
So true.
then I have
ignorance
to.
is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss for somebody. And so if I just don't admit it and I don't talk about it, then I can pretend it's not real, and I don't have to change anything about me or how I'm functioning.
Right. And let us not forget, because I don't want this to be overshadowed, but we also have individuals walking around, and then also professionals who look like me, who are also of the mindset that racism does not exist, or that you need to get over it because you do have opportunities, and not highlighting or giving their clients or patients the opportunity to express how they feel, and that's damaging.
That absolutely.
Well, no, lady, I'm going to cut you off because
okay.
let me just be the devil advocate for a while, because I don't want to feel like we're just pushing off on white European Americans and they just come at us. Yeah, don't come at me. So, but reality is that we have prejudice in all races.
Absolutely.
And there are some African American therapists out there who are possibly angry because of what's going on, and they may not be able to see, you know, when a white woman or a white male come in and we look at you all as the, you know, privileged community as like, okay, why she's sitting up here, you know, sitting here thinking like as a therapist, she's sitting up here complaining, let me tell you some real stress, you know, and so this is why we need to talk about this. No, seriously, you all know I'm telling the truth.
Actually,
We're telling the truth. So we need to start talking about this stuff really, especially as therapists. We need to address it. We need to talk about it. I mean, it's good that we learn multiculturalism, you know, as this, you know, method of dealing with different clients. And we have to look at our own biases and deal with them. But are we really dealing with them? And because we have to.
No, I agree with you. What I wanted to say is that even as therapists, if you want to talk about the behind the veil part of it, we are given the opportunity to learn multiculturalism. Given the opportunity. That doesn't necessarily mean that we actually take it. We might take it for the class, the course, and then leave it there, because in my own personal experience, there are many therapists that I've run across where I have to look at them a little sideways because I'm thinking, did you not take your multicultural course? Did you not really pay attention to how specific groups react?
Right.
Because it's not expressed in your therapeutic stance.
Yeah. But, you know, for me, I'm working with at-risk youth. The one thing I love about this new generation is much as people complain about our youth of today, the youth of today, it seems almost as if they are blind to color. I love it because they are, not all of them, no, not all of them, but they seem to blend a little bit more than other generations. And you sound like you want to say something? Look.
Go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't make
but
my
they
look
tend
to cut you off.
But they tend to blend a little bit more. And I love that because, I mean, there was a time when you couldn't see African Americans and Caucasians walking down the street together,
Yeah,
and these young
that's true.
people are doing a little bit more, and they're hanging, and there's, you know, this whole bruh thing, and, you know, before that was just, you know, African American terms, you know, bruh, and now you see it, no, really, I love these young people, and now you see it amongst all young people. It's like, you know, and they're okay with saying, yeah, bruh, and, you know, there's a unity that, with this generation that we didn't have before.
I think the beauty of it is, especially with us, we all come from like different generations. So I grew up in that generation where there was the melding. However, given the topic that we're discussing, there's a melding, but there's also misinformation. There are things that have not been said. So although we meld as we grow up and we get these privileges or we have these different experiences, we start to then separate because there are things that we're not talking about. And as kids, of course, we're not talking about it, but I'm getting a different experience at home.
Yes.
In school, I'm gonna be okay with you.
Yes.
And as I grow, privilege, I'm gonna take that route.
Societal's reaction to me is going to be different, regardless of how many bruhs I have in school.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say before we take a quick break is Jules mentioned validation and why we as humans always need validations. I always say this to my clients. It is best to learn how to validate yourself, because sometimes we walk through this earth and we're waiting for other people to validate us. Learn how to validate yourself. You have to know that, and I tell my clients this all the time, the only person that you're in control of is you. You can't control anybody around you. Learn who you are, validate you, know that you have purpose, know that, you know, you're a great being in the earth, and walk in that. And it's okay if nobody comes and pets you on the back. Just know yourself, because validation is key. And it starts with you validating you and knowing you. And that calls for self-awareness. Right. And that's a lot of what we're liking in the world today, self-awareness, which is so very key. And so look, ladies, do you all have anything else to say before we take this quick break?
No.
Nope.
All right. So look, guys, this is a great conversation. I want you to stay right there. Don't go anywhere, and we will be right back. A lot of stigmas, yes. And people struggle with their mental health. They don't know the difference between mental health and mental illness. We're just going to talk about some things.
It's more acceptable for a male to fight, to be angry, to go drink too much, to go sleep around too much, you know, just that kind of stuff, that kind of behavior is more acceptable than a male to cry, to say I'm scared.
And I believe in prayer. But there are some issues that when you walk outside of that building, they're walking outside with you.
You got it. Let me take an opportunity to go ahead and explain what a co-occurring disorder is. Basically, like, I like the way that you did it, because that's what it is. They walk hand in hand.
Parents allow the TV to babysit their children.
Gaslighting is basically, there are individuals who are very aware that racism does and has always existed.
Remember to continue talking about mental health and how to make yours a priority.
Welcome back to Intake. I'm your co-host, Jules. Recently, we took a trip to St. Augustine to meet with Stephanie Mahone. Stephanie is a 500-hour certified yoga teacher who enthusiastically shares her practice with beginners and advanced practitioners alike. Stephanie holds a master's degree in psychology, is a mental health therapist, and an addictions therapist. She is currently working as a supported employment manager for a nonprofit agency that assists people with disabilities gain employment in the community. Stephanie has always been in the helping field and has found that yoga, meditation, and breath work have a positive impact on mental health.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
And I am so honored to have you here, Stephanie. Thank you for being on the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I moved to St. Augustine about 6 years ago. I've been a mental health therapist and an addictions therapist. I have a master's in psychology, but it's the experience that means the most, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple years ago, I got my yoga teacher certification, so I'm also a yoga teacher.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
And just for our viewers, she's going to show us some yoga tricks later. Yeah, so, you know, the show is titled, Let's Make Mental Health Great Again.
Yes.
And so what we're talking about is this idea of making America great again and how it doesn't appeal to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, women, people of color, it doesn't appeal to everybody.
Sure.
You, as one who has a psychology background, mental health background, understand that making mental health great again also doesn't appeal to everybody.
Right.
Because people had to go through some things. You know, it was a long process of, you know, turmoil for people in the mental health field.
Yeah.
And we've somewhat, as we talked early, got it right. We're getting there. We're doing better.
Progress.
Yes, progress.
Yeah.
And so tell us about your experience since our current president has been in office.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it's been a challenge, and it's been a challenge for me personally, but I know it's been a challenge for a lot of people as well. It's really scary having somebody in office who is really inconsistent and really impulsive and arrogant and kind of lives from that ego, that place of, I'm the most important kind of person, and everything that I do is right. And you can't really second guess that. And personally, it's been really challenging because I've been triggered a lot. I grew up with a father who shares a lot of personality symptoms, as 45 does. And it's been really triggering. Since he's been president, I've really looked inside myself and realized how much trauma there has been since I've been, growing up and everything. I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
So realizing a lot of the emotional abuse that I went through as a kid really has been triggered through just listening to the current president speak and how disrespectful it is and disgusting at times.
Yeah. Use the term triggered. And unfortunately, a lot of people are being triggered by our current president because he does say things that presidents before him would never say in media. And he's aggressive, and he's ensuing a lot of hatred, bullying, racism. And so people are triggered because they don't know which direction America is going. And how in the world did we ever get this president? You know?
Yeah.
And while I'm thankful to be in America, and my spiritual background tells me to pray for all those in authority, even governments, people in government, and I do that for him. But at the same time, even myself, I struggle and I go, okay, what is really going on?
It's tough.
And so the term triggered, there are a lot of people out there being triggered. What would you say to those people who are being triggered by him because he is a narcissist?
It's very normal. I really want to tell people that so much of us are being triggered by the disgusting things that the president says and his actions that are also equally disgusting. He's someone who says and does the same thing, and they're just bad. They're not great a lot of the times. It's really interesting. For me, it's been a time of introspection. I found it, always trying to look for the positive in a situation. So, since he's been president, I've kind of taken that opportunity to look inside me and try to clean out some of the emotional baggage that I've had that I didn't, I've been carrying around, but maybe didn't notice it quite as much. So, being triggered, it's all kind of coming up, and it kind of came up really quickly. I remember on the day that he was elected, I got to work, and I was a mental health therapist at that time, and I just broke down sobbing. I just couldn't believe that after we had such an amazing president who was so intelligent and empathetic and just incredible, honestly, I loved him in every way. That we go to this.
It's almost like we just went backwards.
It's exactly right.
Backwards.
It's 2 steps forward, we're making progress, and then some people weren't comfortable with it, maybe? Yeah. It's hard to not be angry about it.
And I by no means am a political person. I could care less what your political choice is.
Right.
Okay? I basically believe that, we live in a society where we should at least treat each other like humans.
Right.
And respect, our differences and all of that. But I have to talk about things like this because of my profession.
Right.
And because I'm seeing a lot of things in my profession and in my personal life due to our current president.
Yes.
Because you have people who are having panic attacks, their anxiety is increasing, stress is increasing. There's so many things that's going on just because he's in the White House.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about this because I believe as therapists, we do need to have a conversation about, okay, how do we handle a client that comes in and say, listen, every time I hear him do something, I just want to scream, or I don't want to leave the house, and
Yeah.
it's happening.
Yes.
So what do you say about that?
It's really, so I really try to limit my intake of what, of him.
Yeah.
I limit him. I would say I'm a political person. I've been, and I kind of have to be because politics now involves human rights. Like those are not guaranteed right now, and I think that's the scariest part about this. I really tell people to limit their news intake. Maybe limit it to 30 minutes, or 10 minutes.
Right.
I was able to completely stop, and that's because I have a partner who is able to fill me in on the important things. I'm triggered every time I see him, so I'm gonna stop watching.
Okay.
That was the biggest thing that helped me, and my therapist kind of told me, Steph, it's okay. I know you need to be involved, and it's important that we know what's going on. But you don't need to watch him every day because it is causing severe anxiety and depression and panic attacks. Personally, I've struggled with depression and anxiety most of my life. Yoga and meditation help that, if we find our things. But yeah, it's really tough. Yeah.
And see, I just don't watch him.
Yeah.
I don't
You can't
do anything. Because I do find that when I do hear some of the things that he said, I personally become angry.
So,
but I have a husband who loves the news. I have a daughter who loves to,
Yeah.
So when they fill me in, I'm like, and when I can't take so much, I'm like, okay, that's enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I leave the room. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I heard the first sentence of this, and I'm all set.
Yeah.
And it's just like that tightness of the chest, that pit in your stomach. I get like a little sick, a little nauseous. Just like, I don't need to be feeling this way. I don't need to be putting myself in this position. I'm able to turn this off and walk away. I never had panic attacks before 45 became the president, and that's something that I'm dealing with now for the past couple of years.
And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are dealing with.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're afraid to, talk about it.
Yes.
Because, and I need to say this, because there are therapists watching this. As a therapist, it doesn't matter what my political choice is.
Right.
As therapists, we're supposed to be non-biased.
Right. Yes.
And so if a client comes in and says to me, well, no, this president, he's doing, I should not have anything, negative to say to the client because I'm like, yeah, I love him.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Oh yeah, I agree with you. No.
Right.
Because it's never about us.
Right.
It's never about the clinician, it's always about the client.
Right.
And so as clinicians, we also need to, not only be aware that this is existing, but we need to be aware of how to approach it and leave our political choices out the door when it comes to our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the only way that we can help them.
That's right. We really have to stay unbiased. And my panic attacks are not because of the president. It's because of, the emotional abuse that I, endured as a child that's being triggered by someone who is very similar to my father. So that's where my stuff is coming from. And I just want people to be aware of that, and that's a possibility, and it's okay to talk about, and we're not placing blame or anything like that, as much as unhappy I am with the current president. Yeah, I'm not blaming. Yeah, there's no blame there, but it's important to talk about and his disrespect.
We talked about this earlier, that in a sense you do kind of empathize with him.
Yes.
Yeah, you do kind of empathize with him. Because while he's not forcing people to hate, he's not forcing people to bully, he's not forcing the increase of all this negative stuff. However, his approach, this is a better term, when we do, view him in media or when he's tweeting, it kind of just gives a stamp of approval to say it's okay.
That's right. It's giving permission
yes.
for people to act really irresponsibly, really impulsively and aggressively, and often against people of color, because we have concentration camps in this world now. And there's kids in there. What happened?
Yeah.
How did we get to this place? How did America get to that place?
And what do we say when we're saying this is what making America great again? What are we really saying to our children?
We're saying let's go back to the 20s and 30s when racism was okay. Let's go back when we had slaves. Let's go back when women couldn't vote. I mean, it's really hard to interpret make America great again in any other context. We've made progress. We don't want to go backwards.
No.
We want to go forward. We want to keep making progress. And it's really comes down to basic human rights.
And acknowledging that what you do and say as the person who is in the place of, what is the term, over America, the person who represents the U.S.,
He's the number one guy. I mean, he's representing America.
He's affecting our mental state, our emotional state. All of that is mental health. And we need to talk more about it.
We need to be open about that and discuss that.
Open. Exactly.
Yes, that's really important. And as therapists, we can empathize. I can empathize with the president. I know that he didn't get this way by accident. I know that a lot of different, both environmental and biological factors had a hand in producing the adult that he is today. And I saw that with my dad too. I know where my dad came from. I know that his family wasn't great. So it's really, it's talking about it, and it's just shedding light on those issues.
It's talking about it in a non-defensive manner.
We
can slowly talk them out and come to some kind of, some middle line to say, okay, I see where you're coming from. But I still believe what I believe.
And I think that there is going to be a middle ground. I think that we can get people, because again, it's hard to argue with human rights. I don't know how anybody could disagree with people should be treated equally. It's hard. It's hard. I'm not compromising.
Not to mention our Constitution says all men are created equal. So that's hard. And when you get to that, when you lose sight of that, then we have a serious problem. When you lose sight of human rights, we have a serious problem.
That's right.
It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter whether you're female or male.
I don't care who you love.
No. It just matters that you breathe.
That's right.
You bleed.
You're a person, you're important.
You think. You are important. And that's why I'm so happy I have you here today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Before we end this interview, can you just look in the camera? Say something to our viewers to encourage them with what's going on currently.
So I always think that we are still making progress. Sometimes things need to be brought into light. We've had a lot of issues that have been swept under the rug for a really long time and are kind of being brought to light with this current president. People of color it's not like it's been easy up until now, sort of thing. There's been a lot of issues. So if anything, this president has shed light on what we need to work on in America. So I am grateful to him for that.
And I think somebody said it best, only he could have brought these things to light.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a sense, while you kind of feel a little angry with him at times, you want to just say, thank you for bringing all this to light.
Yes.
Yeah, because now we can really try to
Now
talk
we can
about this stuff.
right now we can work on it, and we have mental health shows. You know what I mean? Like we have these conversations now out in the open, and I'm hoping that mental health stigma is starting to go away the more we talk about it.
And we have to talk about it.
Yes.
Before we go, and I don't want to forget this, because you brought up something earlier about the women that voted for our president.
Yes, about half of white women voted for the president, and that it angers me. It hurts me. It's really upsetting. It's really sad. I don't know how another woman could vote for someone who is so vocally against women, whose actions that were caught on camera.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah.
You don't need, like, you don't need to guess. You don't need, it's not he said, she said, it's on tape.
Yeah.
For a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And it's hard to work past the anger, but, you know, those women.
It kind of makes you wonder, okay, it's like balancing which is more important. Me as a minority, a female, now, you know, whether you're a white woman or not, you're still a minority.
Right.
Or the anger, the hatred that I have for a group of people.
Right.
And so I'm willing to give up my feminist rights so that I can express, or so that I can, you know, do whatever I need to do to deal with this or retaliate with my anger and hatred. And you're still losing out though.
Right.
And that's what
Whenever you react with anger, you're going to lose out.
Yeah.
Yes, and anger is natural. It's not something that we need to, you know, work against, but it's when we're angry, there's a reason for it. So when I'm angry that women voted for him, it just means to me, it's just a fire in my belly that I need to talk about this more. I need to ask them why.
Right.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I really wanted to get to that. Yeah.
And so, when you talked about dealing with anger, I know for me, like I said, I rarely watch, hardly ever watch him. But when I do hear things and I find myself becoming angry, as a therapist, I've learned to cope with the anger. A lot of people haven't.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm having this talk with you, because I want you to show our viewers some things that yoga helps with.
Absolutely.
And yoga does help with depression. Tell us some of the things it helps with.
Depression, anxiety, stress. It helps with mental clarity, with confidence. It helps you to live a less judgmental life. Yeah. It helps in every aspect.
Great.
Yeah.
So again, I want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor.
Yeah. For being honest and for being willing to talk about the issues that we need to talk about.
Yeah, it's important.
Like mental health. Because we
Absolutely.
definitely need to continue these talks about mental health.
Yes.
And how our society, our culture, it affects, you know, our mental health. And it does it sometime in a positive way, sometime in a negative way. But we need to talk about both.
Yes.
And how we can cope with it.
Absolutely.
So I thank you.
I thank you so much.
If you're looking for more information about a topic that was discussed on one of our shows, please visit intake.tv and check out our resource page.
If you're a professional who would like to be on the show, or an individual who has struggled with mental health and would like to be a guest, email us at info@intake.tv.
Follow us on all of our social media platforms.
Okay.
Intake is the place to be.
It's because